Imagine you are standing in your kitchen at 2 a.m., you flick on the light, and a cockroach scurries across the counter.
Oh, yeah. Your immediate visceral instinct is just pure disgust.
Right. You want to go grab a shoe or bug spray or maybe, honestly, just sell the house entirely.
Totally. It is the universal reaction.
But what if I told you that the very creature you are trying to smash holds a profound biological secret, like one that could actually rewrite our understanding of human pregnancy?
I mean, it sounds completely absurd when you put it that way.
It really does.
But we have this incredibly sharp dividing line in our minds, between the animals we cherish and the ones we actively try to push to the absolute margins of our existence.
And it's such a bizarre contradiction when you really sit down and think about it. Like, if you have a pet, you probably spend an unreasonable amount of time analyzing their every move.
Oh, for sure. We all do it.
We read articles with titles like, Is Your Indoors Only Cat Bored? Or we obsess over exactly how a dog's hearing compares to a human's, measuring the pitch and the intensity.
Right. We buy them puzzle feeders to ensure their emotional fulfillment.
Exactly. But the moment we step outside and see a raccoon digging in the bin, or, I don't know, a gull swooping down near our fries, they are instantly demoted.
Yeah, they aren't complex creatures anymore.
No, they're just trash animals, pests, disposable annoyances.
We basically strip them of their biology because of their proximity to our garbage. And honestly, that cognitive dissonance is the entire focus of the material we are analyzing today.
Which brings us to the mission for today's deep dive into the sources. We are going to challenge how you view those unpopular intruders at the margins of your life.
It's a really fascinating shift in perspective.
It really is. So, we are looking at a revealing interview from Psychology Today between animal behaviorist Mark Beckhoff and evolutionary biologist Dr. Marlene Zuk. They're discussing her book, Outsider Animals.
Right.
And we are going to unpack what these pests can actually teach us about intelligence, adaptability, and, well, our own complicated place in nature.
And to do that, we first need to examine the lens through which we view the animal kingdom, because Dr. Zek points out a fundamental flaw in human psychology when it comes to wildlife.
Yeah, she says we basically force animals into one of two extreme categories.
Exactly. We either anthropomorphize them or we reduce them to mere machinery. There's really no in-between for us.
While I was reading through the source material, this analogy just kept popping into my mind to describe this. It feels like we treat the animal kingdom like a high school cafeteria.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, you have the popular kids, right? The chimpanzees, the octopuses, our dogs and cats. They sit at the center tables, and everyone wants to be their friend.
Yeah, the charismatic megafauna.
All right. But hovering out on the edges, you have the weird outsiders, the tardigrades, the spiders, the coyotes, the cockroaches. They are completely marginalized.
That framing really highlights the social hierarchy we impose on nature. When we look at the popular animals at the center table, we anthropomorphize them.
We project our own human traits onto them.
Precisely. We say, look at how that chimp is acting. She's just like us. We claim a kinship. We hope that if we prove they are smart or cute in a way we recognize, it kind of justifies our affection.
But then with the outsiders...
With the outsider animals, we strip them of all internal complexity. We view them as biological automatons.
Like they're just thoughtless, feelingless robots programmed solely to infest our homes or scavenge our streets.
Exactly. And the source material makes it clear that both extremes are a massive problem, even the positive one.
Yeah, treating an animal like a tiny, furry human blinds you to its actual biological reality just as much as treating it like a disposable machine does.
It does. Because if you are only looking for a reflection of yourself in an animal, or if you're entirely blinded by your own disgust, you aren't seeing the creature on its own terms.
I think it is worth pausing for a second to ask yourself, as a listener, have you ever claimed a connection with an animal that doesn't genuinely exist just because it made you feel better?
Or on the flip side, have you written off an animal's intelligence entirely just because it gave you the creeps?
It is a really tough pill to swallow to realize our affection for certain species might just be us seeking a mirror.
It is.
Yeah.
But this leads right into the science, because once you stop treating these outsider animals as either human replicas or mindless pests, the biological realities are staggering.
Okay, let's go back to that cockroach in the kitchen at 2 a.m. The interview explicitly notes that cockroaches can teach us about human pregnancy.
They do, yeah.
And I just have to push back on this. I mean, how does a universally despised kitchen invader hold the key to understanding human mammalian biology?
Well, your reaction right there, the absolute disbelief is the very barrier Dr. Zuk is talking about.
The disgust factor.
Exactly.
Mm.
Societal disgust acts as a blinder. We assume there is nothing of value in a cockroach.
Mm.
But biological complexity does not care about human aesthetics.
Nature doesn't care if we think it's gross.
Right. While we think of insects as simply, laying massive clutches of eggs and moving on, there are specific species, like the Pacific beetle cockroach, that are viviparous.
Wait, viviparous, so they give birth to live young, like a mammal.
Yes, they give birth to live young. And the mechanism is where the connection to human pregnancy emerges.
Okay, color me intrigued. How does that work?
Inside the mother's brood sac, she secretes a nutrient-dense liquid substance. Functionally, it's a form of milk.
Cockroach milk, wow.
Yeah, and this milk crystallizes in the embryo's guts. The growing young absorb these crystals, allowing them to develop and grow at an extraordinary rate before they are born.
That is wild.
By studying how the specialized brood sac functions, how the proteins are transferred and absorbed, researchers gain crucial insights into convergent evolution.
Meaning they evolved similar traits independently.
Exactly. It shows us how completely different branches of the tree of life, an insect and a primate, arrived at strikingly similar biological solutions for nourishing offspring internally.
That completely flips the script. We look at them and just see, a hard shell and antenna. But internally, they are running a highly complex reproductive system that mirrors a mammalian womb.
And if we lock the door on that research simply because we think the animal is gross, we miss out on a fundamental biological marvel. The mechanisms of life exist across the entire spectrum.
Okay, so if disgust blinds us to the cockroach, then overfamiliarity must be what blinds us to the rat.
That's a great way to put it.
We think of them as subway menaces, but the source notes, they are the foundational baseline for so much of our laboratory science.
They really are the backbone of lab work.
Yet Dr. Zuk hints that rats actually challenge our understanding of what a baseline even is.
Right, because we use the laboratory rat,
Mm-hmm.
specifically these highly standardized inbred strains, for almost everything.
Yeah.
Toxicology, psychology, genetics.
Because they're predictable.
Exactly. We assume because we have studied these specific rats for a century, they represent a universal mammalian standard.
But they don't.
Dr. Zuk's exploration suggests that taking a highly specialized, domesticated version of a single species and using it as the proxy for all mammalian life can heavily skew our data.
Okay, so it sounds like trying to understand the engineering of every vehicle on Earth by only ever studying a 2010 Honda Civic.
I love that analogy.
Right. Like, sure, the Civic has an engine and wheels. But if you assume every car functions exactly like it, you are going to be completely lost when you encounter a Formula One race car or a diesel tractor.
That is a perfect translation of the concept, wild outsider animals. And that includes wild urban rats face immense environmental pressures.
Diseases, predators.
Exactly. Diseases, huge dietary shifts, weather changes that laboratory rats never experience. By confusing our perfectly controlled engineered lab rat with the vast complexity of wild mammalian biology, we narrow our scientific vision.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so cockroaches show us reproductive complexity, and rats show us the danger of false baselines, but the interview brings up snakes, and this one is just wild to me.
Oh, this is one of my favorite parts.
The text states that snakes may be the only animal that has genuinely changed human evolution. This isn't just about us learning from them. This is about them physically altering our trajectory.
They literally shaped us.
How? How does a snake change human evolution?
It comes down to an evolutionary arms race.
Yep.
It's often referred to in evolutionary biology as snake detection theory.
Okay, snake detection theory. What is that?
For millions of years, snakes were the most consistent, deadly predators of early primates. You have constrictors and later highly venomous snakes.
And they were just everywhere we lived.
Right. They were perfectly camouflaged in the trees and the grass where our ancestors lived and foraged.
So basically, if you couldn't spot the snake in time.
You didn't pass on your genes. It was that simple.
Wow.
The selective pressure was immense. Surviving meant detecting a static, hidden pattern in a fraction of a second.
And that changed our biology.
Yes. This pressure is theorized to have driven the expansion of specific visual centers in the primate brain. It led to our exceptional forward-facing vision, our ability to perceive certain colors, and the rapid neural pathways that trigger fear.
That is unbelievable. So when you jump back instinctively because you see like a curved stick on a hiking trail,
You are experiencing a neurological reflex sculpted by millions of years of primate-snake interaction. They didn't just share an environment with us, they helped wire the human brain.
the idea that the shape of our eyes and the structure of our visual cortex were quite literally carved out by our fear of snakes. It makes you look at a snake not as a pest, but as an evolutionary architect.
It completely elevates them from just being a creepy thing in the garden.
Totally. And this misjudgment of outsiders isn't limited to things that creep and crawl. Let's look at the sky. The interview brings up gulls.
Ah, yes. The classic beach pest.
People call them rats with wings. We just yell at them for stealing sandwiches. But the source material highlights that gulls have illustrated the prevalence of same-sex pairing in nature.
Right. When we dismiss gulls as simple scavengers, we ignore their intricate social dynamics.
Because we just assume they're driven by French fries.
Exactly. But researchers studying gull colonies noticed that some nests were attended by two females.
Really? Just two females raising chicks.
Yes. These female-female pairs court each other, establish territories, and even raise chicks together, often successfully.
That's amazing.
This observation in gulls, a common trash bird, actually shattered long-held scientific assumptions that heterosexual pairing was a strict universal mandate for all avian social structures.
So it proves that complex, diverse social bonds aren't reserved for the popular animals at the center table of the cafeteria.
Exactly. You don't have to be a chimpanzee or an elephant to have a nuanced societal structure.
You can be a gull sitting on top of a street lamp.
The overarching theme of Dr. Zuk's work is that these animals contain multitudes, but understanding that complexity forces us to confront a difficult reality.
Yes.
Well, if they are so biologically fascinating, why do we constantly battle them? Why are we at war with raccoons and cowbirds and common minus in our cities and suburbs?
Yeah, the uncomfortable truth in the source text is that we are the architects of the conflict.
We absolutely are.
People complain constantly about raccoons tearing up the roof or cowbirds taking over local bird feeders. We call them invaders.
Right. We view them as malevolent forces actively trying to ruin our property.
But the human catalyst is undeniable. Consider the raccoon in an urban environment.
It's the perfect example. A city is essentially a landscape paved with calories.
Paved with calories, that is such a good description.
If our trash wasn't so omnipresent, accessible, and incredibly nutrient-dense, raccoons wouldn't find cities so inviting. We have inadvertently built the perfect never-ending buffet for them.
It really is like leaving an all-you-can-eat sign out on your lawn, providing a massive spread of food, and then calling the authorities the moment someone actually shows up to grab a plate.
That is exactly what we do. We alter a landscape completely, lay claim to it, and then reflexively assume we should maintain the upper hand in managing however nature responds to those alterations.
We create the conditions for these animals to thrive, and then label them pests.
For doing exactly what their biology dictates, surviving efficiently.
Which brings us to the most fascinating and frankly confusing paradox in the entire deep dive. The word invasive.
It's a very loaded word.
We use that word as a weapon to justify eradicating certain outsider animals. But Dr. Zuk highlights a massive dilemma involving the cabbage white butterfly.
Yes, she references an interview with butterfly expert Art Shapiro for her book.
And the cabbage white butterfly is an invasive species. Traditional conservation logic says it doesn't belong here, it's an outsider, and we should get rid of it to protect native species.
Right, that's the standard operating procedure.
But there is a massive complication,
A
right?
profound ecological complication. As human development expands, the native plants that indigenous butterflies rely on for food and egg laying are wiped out.
Paved over for parking lots and subdivisions.
Exactly. So, in response to this destruction, many native butterfly species undergo an adaptive shift. They begin to rely on introduced invasive plant species to survive.
Wow. So the non-native plants become a crucial life raft for the native insects.
Yes, they adapt to what's available.
So if we decide we want to fix the problem by ripping out all the invasive weeds to return a field to its natural state.
We might accidentally drive the native butterflies into extinction because we just destroyed their new food source.
That is a total catch-22.
It creates a tremendous philosophical knot. What does it actually mean to belong to an ecosystem?
Right, because nature is not a static museum exhibit.
It is highly dynamic. The web of life has rewoven itself around our presence and our mistakes. Dr. Zuk really challenges the assumption that humans even know what the natural state is anymore.
Because pristine nature might be a romantic illusion at this point.
Very likely, yes.
We can't just hit a reset button. The trash is here, the concrete is here, the invasive weeds have taken root, and the gulls and raccoons are navigating it all perfectly.
They're thriving in it.
So if we live in a world permanently altered by human behavior, and we can't exterminate our way back to some fictional, untouched Eden, how are we supposed to coexist with these outsider animals?
A good starting point is recognizing that they aren't truly outsiders. They're deeply woven, not just into our environment, but into our cultural fabric.
Oh, yeah. The source text points out how much fun Dr. Zuk had exploring the quirky ways these animals show up in our art and media.
It's surprisingly common once you start looking.
I loved the cultural references in the interview. She mentions Archie the cockroach, a famous character from early 20th century poetry.
Right, the one who typed messages by jumping on the keys of a typewriter.
Yes, which is why his name is always spelled in lowercase letters. He couldn't hit the shift key.
It's a great detail.
Then there's Rascal the raccoon from the classic children's book, and snakes appearing in literature everywhere from ancient religious texts to the Harry Potter series.
We have a deep, complicated fixation on these animals.
We really do. And because they are so intertwined with the human experience, Dr. Zuk offers a very specific solution for reframing our mindset.
She introduces the concept of appreciation.
And she frames this carefully, comparing it directly to an art appreciation or a wine appreciation class.
Right, and this is a crucial nuance to highlight. Dr. Zuk isn't demanding that you suddenly fall deeply in love with cockroaches.
Yeah, she isn't saying you have to stop exterminating them when they invade your kitchen.
Or that we should ignore the real public health concerns of rats in a dense city. Nobody is saying that.
Right. So how does the wine class analogy work?
Well, think about the mechanics of a wine appreciation class. When you enroll, the expectation isn't that you are going to love the taste of every single wine poured for you.
Right, you might find a certain vintage far too bitter.
Exactly. But through the class, you gain knowledge. You learn about the complex fermentation process, the specific soil the grapes grew in, the history of the vineyard.
So you develop a deep respect for the craft, even if you personally prefer not to drink it.
Exactly. That analogy clarifies the whole concept. You can squash the cockroach, but as you do it, you can at least respect the fact that its biology is so impossibly resilient that it utilizes a reproductive system comparable to mammalian pregnancy.
Yeah, you can be annoyed by the gull stealing a fry while simultaneously acknowledging that it possesses social structures complex enough to challenge long-held scientific dogmas.
It is about breaking the binary. An animal does not have to be an adorable center-table pet to have value.
Nor should it be dismissed as disposable trash.
We shouldn't anthropomorphize them and pretend a raccoon is just a tiny burglar in a mask, but we also must stop treating them as invisible. They are complex, highly adaptable neighbors.
And what a journey that is. We started this deep dive looking at how quickly we dismiss these creatures, shoving them to the margins.
And we end up seeing how integral they really are.
Right. By unpacking the science with Dr. Zuk and Mark Beckhoff, we see that these trash animals hold profound secrets to evolutionary biology, reproductive science, and sheer survival.
They hold up a mirror not to our human traits, but to the reality of the completely altered world we've built.
So here is the challenge for you, the listener. The next time you are walking to your car and you see a gull standing on a lamppost, or you hear a raccoon rattling around in your recycling bin, I want you to try to pause.
Just take a second.
Yeah. Instead of defaulting to that immediate flash of annoyance, try to view them through the lens of appreciation. Look at them as the ultimate survivors navigating a landscape that we terraformed.
And if we pull on that thread of urban adaptability,
Yeah.
there is one final thought worth pondering based on the source material.
Let's hear it.
We look at our sprawling cities, our endless concrete, and our omnipresent waste, and we view it as a strictly human domain.
Because we built it for us.
Right. But if this environment is proving to be a perfectly designed, high-calorie playground for these highly adaptable, rapidly evolving outsider animals, are humans inadvertently engineering the ultimate survivor species? Long after our civilizations are gone, will the rats, the cockroaches, and the raccoons be the ones who truly inherit the environments we built?
Now that is a thought that will stick with you the next time you take out the trash.